What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Thursday, December 18th edition of the Ship My Money Show. 11-game NBA slate tonight on DraftKings, 12 on FanDuel. Going to walk through the DraftKings slate, going game by game, touching on players I'm getting to right now, talking about injuries, all of that stuff. Going to try and keep it as brief as I can. 11 games is a lot. There's going to be a lot of players that you really don't need to talk about because there are 11 games to find players from. Going to use the Run the Sims projections for this. They are still currently free. Won't be free for much longer, I don't think, but for now they are while we finish up some final touches on them. Link is in the description below. Link for Discord also in the description below. Both are free for now. Discord will stay free. Projections will not. So check those out. But I used them, built some lineups, and going to take a look at what I'd be getting to if the slate started right now. But more importantly for you, going to just break down every game, talking about everything that seems relevant to me. Starting with the Knicks taking on, I don't know why it's over here. The Knicks taking on the Pacers in Indiana, about a 112 total for Indiana, 116 for the Knicks. Starting on the Knicks side, and as always, if you have questions, feel free to throw them in chat. Starting on the Knicks side, taking a quick look at their injury report. We'll have a new one in a minute, but the 3:30 injury report, we had OG Anunoby questionable, Josh Hart questionable, Mitchell Robinson questionable, and Karl Anthony Towns questionable. Getting some alerts right now, but haven't seen anything yet on the Knicks. Malachi Branham is out. That shouldn't really matter for anything. He's not on the Knicks. So we have all these Q tags. Obviously, it's up in the air. For now, we have the questionable guys on the Knicks projected in. Just got the 4:30 injury report, and those guys are all still questionable. No Miles McBride, no Landry Shamet, but Q tags remain on Anunoby, Hart, Robinson, and Karl Anthony Towns. If any of those guys get ruled out, obviously it makes other players on the Knicks look better. If Towns is out, you're talking about increased usage for Jalen Brunson in particular. Also, some more opportunities for Hart, Bridges, and Anunoby. If Anunoby is out, you're opening up more minutes for Hart and Bridges, in addition to probably some more for Jordan Clarkson, maybe for Tyler Kolek. So definitely a team that we will have to keep an eye on as the day goes on. But for right now, assuming that all of the players projected in are in, there's no real ownership projected to come in to the Knicks. 6% to Anunoby at 6,200 is the high mark, and then like 2 to 3% on Towns, Brunson, and Hart. I am actually getting to a good amount of Jalen Brunson in particular right now. $8,600 price tag, high upside player. It is an 11-game slate, so you don't have to go super off the board to find contrarian plays. But Jalen Brunson's the kind of guy that I do like getting to at low ownership in large field tournaments. He is the nice thing about 11-game slates. Like, there are pros and cons to slates of this size. A negative is that you're almost definitely going to get at least one, if not multiple, overtime games, which is going to be annoying if you don't happen to have that game. You're going to get probably some injuries where guys that weren't really great plays end up doing really well because of the injury. You're going to just get some absurd scores from random people because that's going to happen on an 11-game slate. But a thing that is nice is that you can get 3% owned Jalen Brunson, being able to get to contrarian plays that are still legitimately really, really good plays to get to. Brunson, so far this season, averaging about 43.5 DraftKings points per 36 minutes played, projected to play about 33.5 minutes in our projections at Run the Sims. So I am getting him in about 19% of my lineups. Again, you can replace Jalen Brunson with any number of other guys. I don't think that there's anything like special about Jalen Brunson for, why he's showing up in my lineups compared to the field. It's more so just that I do like getting on slates of this size to high upside mid-range guys like Jalen Brunson, that, he's capable of just going out, giving you 50 plus fantasy points at only $8,600 and very low ownership. He will become less useful as news breaks as well. If it's like non-Knicks news, the more value that opens up, the more cheap value rather that opens up, that is kind of a negative for somebody like Brunson, because it will make it easier to prioritize Luka Doncic or Nikola Jokic at the very top of the pricing spectrum. But DraftKings has done a good job of this season of really jacking up the salaries on the top guys $12,800 for Jokic at center, $12,000 point guard only for Luka. Like, those do come with high opportunity costs. So for right now, where you have a lot of Q tags on the slate, getting to mid-range guys like Brunson does look good as a contrarian option. So I do like that. Mikal Bridges getting in 7% of my lineups. I'm getting 2 to 5% on Towns and Hart as well. But Brunson is the guy that's really popping for me right now. Certainly subject to change between now and lock as we get more news. Like I said, 1.21 DraftKings points per minute for him overall this season. 28.5% assist percentage, 32% usage rate. Certainly like the upside that he offers. On the other side for Indiana, Tyrese Halliburton, of course, out for the year. No Nesmith, no Shepherd, no Obi Toppin. None of those are new. No Q tags for the Pacers. So we have a lot more concrete information for them. 3% ownership coming in to Isaiah Jackson is the high mark, and then less than that to everybody else. So no priorities here for the Pacers. The only guy that I'm getting double-digit exposure to is actually Isaiah Jackson, only projected for 18 minutes, 3,600, center only. I don't really like Isaiah Jackson. I don't think he'll actually end up in a lot of my lineups once news breaks. For right now, it's just, hey, this is a good point per minute guy. He's not going to be very popular. I'll roll the dice and hope things go my way. But I would be pretty surprised if we don't have better value by lock. Beyond that, $8,900 for Pascal Siakam. He's pretty much correctly priced. $6,900 for Andrew Nembhard. He's pretty much correctly priced. I don't see a lot that really stands out to me from the Pacers. If you told me that you wanted to play Pascal Siakam in place of some Jalen Brunson, sure, I think those are very comparable, but they aren't the spots that I'm getting to. So no real Pacers for me, especially assuming that I lose most of the Isaiah Jackson that I do have. But for right now, just using some Isaiah Jackson as low-owned value. He's a fantasy point, slightly above a fantasy point per minute guy. Again, not excited about him. Opportunity cost is high at center, but he's in some lineups for me right now and probably will disappear once better value opens up. Moving on to the Hawks and the Hornets. The Hawks are returning Trae Young. That is pretty much by default some level of negative for Jalen Johnson. We don't know how much, though. And his price tag has actually dropped a little bit already, down to $10,000, facing a Charlotte team that has been in the bottom 10 in adjusted defensive rating this season. They have also played at a slow pace, which is not ideal. But I do think that there is still some merit to targeting Jalen Johnson in large field tournaments, because I think he's overpriced for his median now, but not necessarily for his ceiling. We've seen Jalen Johnson take on a really different role with Trae Young out, where he's been the primary facilitator, but he's also been very good at it. So I'm curious to see what the Hawks do in terms of rotations. Do they stagger him and Trae Young? Do they try and run a lot of minutes where Jalen Johnson is still the primary creator? The ball is in his hands a lot. We don't have an answer to that yet. If the answer is no, Trae Young, it's also relatively likely that Trae Young is somewhat limited in this game from a playing time standpoint, which is good for Jalen Johnson. But like, if it turns out that the answer is no, they just have Jalen Johnson and Trae Young on the floor together for the vast majority of Jalen Johnson's minutes, and Trae Young is initiating the offense, and Jalen Johnson is back to, standing in a corner and cutting and taking shots when Trae Young gives him the ball, then we know in future games that Jalen Johnson's price needs to drop considerably before we consider him. But for right now, the answer could also be yes, where, like, let's say Trae Young plays 26 minutes and Jalen Johnson plays like 36, which is, basically what we have projected. And then let's say that every minute that Jalen Johnson is off the floor, Trae Young is on the floor, and vice versa. Then you're only talking about Trae Young and Jalen Johnson sharing the floor for like 33% of Jalen Johnson's minutes. Jalen Johnson can still perform well in those minutes. Another variable is how much does Trae Young defer to Jalen Johnson? Trae Young talked about the fact that some parts of this offense have run very, very well without him. I assume that is referring to Jalen Johnson initiating because it has been good. So there is some volatility to, does Trae Young just play off ball more? Like, what's that end up looking like? But also, if 67% of Jalen Johnson's minutes are the same minutes that he's been playing this season without Trae Young, where he's been extremely productive. Overall, 1.43 DraftKings points per minute this season, and that number increases a bit when you take Young off the floor. But mostly, it's in that range. Trae Young's only played 5 games. As long as ownership moves away from him, which right now he's projected for like 7% ownership, as long as ownership moves away from him, I don't really have an issue being above the field by probably not a ton, but I have like 16% right now. You have multiple paths to get there still. You have the path where Trae Young actually shares the floor with Jalen Johnson a lot, but Jalen Johnson just is really efficient and you get lucky. But you also have the path where they stagger their minutes and maybe Jalen Johnson still has the ball in his hands a lot, even when they are on the floor together. And Trae Young kind of just tries to ease his way in. There's a lot of uncertainty here, where as long as ownership is low, I think getting to Jalen Johnson against a weak Charlotte defense does make some sense, even at a price tag that probably will be coming down going forward. Onyeka Okongwu getting 12% ownership. I only have 2% of him right now. I do think he's fine. He's 7,700. It's a good matchup, all of that. There's just a million good centers on the slate. So if you want to play Okongwu, fine. If you want to find some other ones that are lower owned, I think that is also fine. Dyson Daniels getting 3% ownership. Last guy in type piece. But mostly, I don't think there's any true priorities for Atlanta. I think that probably the quote unquote best play, just ownership aside, is Okongwu at 7,700, likely to give you low 30s in minutes, good point per minute guy. But the guy that at the moment I actually have the most of is Jalen Johnson, just looking to take advantage of the uncertainty around Trae Young. Everybody knows that it lowers Jalen Johnson's projection compared to when he's out, but we really don't know how much, given that we've seen an entirely different version of Jalen Johnson unlocked so far this season. I don't think you can necessarily just look back at last year and be like, oh, well, Jalen Johnson's going to turn back into what he was last year when Trae Young was healthy, because we've just seen a totally different player utilized totally differently, and it remains to be seen what exactly the Hawks do with that information going forward. Obviously, that's what a coaching staff does. They have to figure out now, all right, shit, we have a good problem on our hands. Jalen Johnson was really good in this increased role. He kind of makes Trae Young look expendable, but now we also have to get Trae Young back into the fold. We're not going to just play Trae Young 12 minutes a game. We're, obviously not going to do that. So it, comes down to what can the coaching staff figure out? What can they put together? Do they stagger minutes like they should, or, probably should? All that remains to be seen, but certainly don't mind hoping that the answer is, yeah, the coaching staff figures it out. Or even if the coaching staff doesn't figure it out, maybe Trae Young, again, just first game back, tries to not rock the boat and not, screw up what has been functional for their offense. So I think there are still ways where Jalen Johnson produces at a higher level than people think he's going to, especially in a favorable matchup with the Hornets as well. On the Charlotte side, 19% ownership coming into Brandon Miller at $7,400. Nobody else getting a ton of ownership. 3% coming into Miles Bridges, 5% to Con Knipple. LaMelo Ball is probable. No Trey Mann, no Pat Connaughton, no Liam McNeely, no Colin Sexton, no a few other guys that don't matter at all. I'm getting to 9% Brandon Miller. I'm sub 5% everybody else on the team. Brandon Miller is the only guy that looks like any level of priority. He's 7,400. He is forward, which generally just has less opportunity cost than other positions. He's projected for low 30s in minutes. The matchup with Atlanta, they have played at a top 10 pace this year. They've been middle of the road in terms of defensive efficiency. The Hornets rather do have a 118 team total. I think Brandon Miller looks fine as a mid-range play. Ownership is there though. Miami taking on Brooklyn in Brooklyn, 118 team total for the Heat, about 110 for the Nets. Starting on the the Miami side, 12% projected ownership coming into Norm Powell, 13% to Jaime Jaquez, 14% to Simone Fontecchio, and then 5% or less to everyone else. So the actual pieces that usually you want to get to, like Bam, only getting 5%. But Norm Powell at 7K, Jaime Jaquez at 6K, and Fontecchio at 4,200, all getting some ownership. For Miami, there is no Tyler Hero, once again, no Jovic, no Larson. Powell is probable. Drew Smith is available. So you should get Elevated playing time again for Fontecchio, who moved into the starting lineup with Hero out previously. Jaquez gets some more solidified minutes off the bench. We have Fontecchio projected to play around 27. Jaquez projected to play around 29. Good chance that Jaquez finds his way into the closing lineup. And then you get additional scoring opportunities, some additional upside for guys like Norm Powell, Bam Adebayo, Andrew Wiggins. But the price tag is relatively expensive on Bam. He's 8K. He is center only, which always hurts him. He's somebody that becomes much, much easier to roster when he is power forward eligible, but there is still a ceiling there. As far as it goes for me, I am getting to 20% Powell, 14% Davion Mitchell at only 4% owned, $5,600 price tag. Nothing super exciting about him, just relatively low owned. Playing time should be in the upper 20s. Hope that you run into some steals, some defensive stats. It's certainly not a good Brooklyn team. The Nets also play at a very slow pace, which is not ideal, but they are a bad team defensively, so that helps. Somebody like Davion Mitchell, ideally, I get to more in, like track meet type games where he can really get more opportunities for steals, get out in transition, make plays that way. But you do have additional ball handling, additional usage available without Tyler Hero. So it does make Mitchell look a little bit better. And again, he is cheap. He's not getting much ownership. I have 13% Fontecchio. I only have 4% Jaquez right now. 6K, shooting guard, small forward eligible. The positional eligibility for him is really nice. Certainly like that. You can kind of just fit him in as a 6K piece in any sort of lineup that you're building. But at the same time, he is getting double-digit ownership here, assuming he's probably coming off the bench, giving you around 30 minutes. He's a good point per minute guy, but it is an 11-game slate. It's just not going to be hard to find guys priced around $6,000 that are going to play around 30 minutes and give you around the fantasy point per minute, give or take. So again, it's not that Jaquez is a bad play. It's just they're on a slate of this size. If you think about like mid-range centers, or you think about players around 6K like Jaquez, as just like a big bucket of guys that some are going to project better than others as far as medians go, but range of outcomes is going to be very similar for like a large bucket of guys. A lot of times my approach is basically let the field pick the ones that they want, and then I'm just going to take the ones that they don't, because I know that on a one-game slate or, one-game sample, they're, maybe the field picks the guy that wins, a head-to-head 53% of the time. I'll take the one that wins 47%, but is 1/3 the ownership. That's just generally spots where you're going to see my ownership the most different from the field, is like getting to those mid-range centers like Okongwu, getting to 6K guys like Jaquez, just because the amount of pivots, just the raw number of pivots grows. When you talk about like a $3,500 point guard that's starting, for example, that is going to be really popular, there's not usually too many other $3,500 plays that project remotely close or give you the same range of outcomes. So like those are guys I end up prioritizing. Whereas, maybe Jaime Jaquez looks a fantasy point better than some other 6K guys, but they all are capable of scoring 40. They all are capable of scoring 22. I'll just take the ones that are, 4% instead of 13%. But ownership aside, Jaquez certainly looks fine. I have 8% Wiggins, 4% Bam. So nothing that stands out as like a true, you have to build around this type priority for Miami. But there are pieces to like here. It is a really shitty Brooklyn defense. You are getting no Tyler Hero, so you get increased opportunities for anybody on this offense that can score and or facilitate. Taking Hero off the floor this season and just taking a look at who has the biggest rate changes. Wiggins overall this year, 0.96 DraftKings points per minute. Mitchell, 0.9. Adebayo, 1.22. Those are their overall rates. When Hero comes off the floor, if it ever loads, I will let you know. Might not be until tomorrow, but at some point it will load. But when you think about it just from like, an expectation standpoint, there we go. Wiggins still 0.96, Mitchell 0.92. No real difference there. No big difference for Adebayo in terms of production either. So Hero being off really hasn't, and I guess it's probably because he missed a lot of games this year, so it's already baked in to overall fantasy production. But I think Miami is a team too, where like you just have so many mouths that can kind of all contribute in different ways, that the best way to think about it is probably just Hero being out increases the chances of a big game from Bam or Wiggins or Jaquez or Powell or, whoever. But it's not as simple as just saying like Hero's out, so now the offense just runs completely through Bam or completely through Powell. Like they still have a lot of quality offensive pieces and not necessarily one like star that just steps up. It's not like, with Cleveland where if you take Mobley off the floor, you take Garland off the floor, it's just Donovan Mitchell or, vice versa. For Miami, it's still like a lot of just solid pieces that'll still kind of contribute in different ways. On the Brooklyn side here, tough matchup as far as defensive ability for Miami goes. They have been a top 5 adjusted defensive rating team, but they have played at the league's fastest pace so far, and it really hasn't been that close. They're like 2 possessions ahead of the Bulls and Blazers, who are second and third. So you do get additional possessions for a typically slow Brooklyn team, but they are likely to be inefficient possessions as well. 21% projected ownership coming into Danny Wolf, who's projected for about 21 minutes at 4,400. Sub 10% ownership coming into everyone else. I have 9% Danny Wolf. That's my highest owned guy from Brooklyn. I think he's fine, but he's still really volatile. Like he's cheap. He has upside. He could get, garbage time potentially if this game blows out. It is about an 8-point spread with the Heat favored on the road. But there's just going to be other guys, again, that like I can get to that have a similar range of outcomes as Danny Wolf. So he's in some lineups for me. I'm not saying like don't play him at all, but I am likely to be below the field if he does come in around 20%. Beyond that, I have 7% Clowney, 7% Claxton. That's pretty much in line with projected ownership. Same for Michael Porter at 8,600. Porter has been a very high upside fantasy producer so far this season, 1.23 DraftKings points per minute, but the salary has adjusted. He is up to $8,600. Nick Claxton, one thing worth pointing out, he's 6,700, always been a solid point per minute guy. He's at 1.12 DraftKings points per minute this year. He has a 22% assist percentage through 25 games. He actually has the highest assist percentage on the Nets outside of he's like half or a point behind Joman, and he's like even with Sarov. And yeah, that's it. He basically has the highest assist percentage, give or take, on the Nets, which is pretty crazy for him. So it does make him a little, I guess, safer. Like he's he can still get there, even if he has a down rebounding game or a down scoring game. He can still get there in another way. So it does kind of increase the ceiling, increase the floor a little bit for Nick Claxton. He looks solid, but again, there's going to be 100 good centers on this slate. Forgot to touch on the Nets injury report, but there is nothing that matters. No Q tags. Nobody's even doubtful. Guys that have been out are still out. So nothing matters there. Clippers taking on Oklahoma City in Oklahoma City. The Clippers have about a 104 total in a brutal matchup. The Clippers have about a 120 total. They're like 15-point or 16-point favorites. The Clippers suck despite having big names on their team. OKC is possibly the best team ever. Not to say that, obviously no game is guaranteed to blow out, and a 16-point spread, if the game is 16 points start to finish, nobody's really losing any playing time outside of like a minute at the end. But there is obviously the potential for this game to really get out of hand, given the Clippers' propensity to just play really shitty basketball. Ty Lue loves to just take his guys off the floor and wave the white flag. So there is, plenty of risk in the Clippers here. Kawhi Leonard projected for 15% ownership at 8,600. That actually surprises me on an 11-game slate, just because of the amount of risk that you're taking on. Like, I'm not one to normally I'm on like the other side of this where like Kawhi is 3% owned, and I'm like, okay, I'll play 10% Kawhi because if this game stays close, Kawhi probably goes nuts. But like if he's going to get 15% ownership on a slate where I can find plenty of alternatives, I only have 3% right now. I think that there's just, in addition to like your normal volatility that comes with one basketball game, there's just so much volatility in his playing time where this game could just be over halfway through the third quarter and you're done seeing Kawhi Leonard at 15% ownership at $8,600. Now, the flip side to this obviously is that, or I guess not obviously because I forgot to say it, but you have a Clippers team that, if I could find them on the injury report, is missing James Harden. No Derek Jones. That doesn't matter as much, but like you're missing James Harden. So like the counterpoint here is Kawhi is $8,600. Without James Harden, he's more than an $8,600 player. So that does offset some of the matchup / blowout risk. But I still, if the ownership's going to be there, I think I can just kind of find other options. I'm not really getting to anything from the Clippers. I have 3% Kawhi. I have 1% Bogdanovich, 1% on Collins, Zubats, and Dunn. But if you are interested, 156 total minutes played for Kawhi without James Harden on the floor this year, 1.29 DraftKings points per minute. But again, OKC just unbelievably good in terms of, one, just winning games in a very easy fashion. But also they are the most efficient defense by a wide margin. 106.6 points allowed per 100 possessions in adjusted defensive rating on dunks and threes for OKC. That is the best in the NBA. Second is Orlando at 111.2. That's like 4.5 points worse than OKC, and it's very good. So maybe ownership is just high right now, and Kawhi does come in around 5-6%, in which case, like, fine, I'll probably be around there too. But I don't know, I can just do other stuff without rostering $8,600 guys against OKC as 16-point dogs. On the OKC side, I'm not getting much here either. One interesting thing you could do in large field tournaments is, like, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is 2% owned, J-Dub is 2% owned, Chet is 1% owned. If you wanted to, like, pair SGA and Kawhi, I think that makes a lot of sense. Or J-Dub and Kawhi, or Chet and Kawhi, whatever. Because you have a team with a 120-point total that is just getting no ownership. And the reason they're not getting any ownership is that, for one, the minutes projections on them aren't that high because they are involved in a good number of blowouts, and this game has a 16-point spread, et cetera, et cetera. But also, they're healthy. You have J-Dub back, you have Chet, you have SGA. So none of these prices stand out as, like, great values. But in a one-game sample where they have a 120 total, there is still a ceiling for any of these guys, for Shai to just go out there and crush, or Chet to have a huge performance, or J-Dub, whatever it may be. But for them to really have a big game, the Clippers have to probably stay in it. Like, you can get a good score where, through three quarters, where, like, let's just say OKC blows them out and J-Dub is good through three quarters, and, he finishes with like 45 fantasy points. You'll take it at 8K, but he didn't quite reach that, like, tournament winning, oh, I'm really glad I have J-Dub score. Same for SGA. He can score 55 points in three quarters. He probably can't score 70. So I do like the idea of, like, if you're playing Kawhi, or if you're playing J-Dub or SGA or Chet, whatever, like, pair them together. It makes a lot of sense to have, and it doesn't have to be Kawhi. Like, it could be Zubats. It could be somebody else, John Collins. But I do like the idea. I don't think people stack games quite enough in NBA DFS anyway, but especially in a game like this, where if this game actually does go like 4 competitive quarters, Kawhi, if you know that for a fact, it makes Kawhi underpriced for sure, but it also means that there's a good chance that, like, one of J-Dub or Shai or Chet are outperforming their salaries, especially a team as good as OKC. Like, it's more likely, if you know the game is competitive to the end, I would guess, and this isn't based on anything other than just me guessing, but I would guess that, like, it's more likely that the Clippers just had a hot shooting game, or, like, Kawhi just had a vintage Kawhi game, than that OKC just completely shit the bed and nobody did well, because it's just such a good team. They have so many good players. It's more likely that the Clips just, like, ran hot and they stayed in the game and they got maximum minutes from the OKC guys who were playing well, because they always play well. Houston taking on the Pelicans in New Orleans. About a 121 total for Houston, about 114 for the Pels. Starting with the injury report, because I keep managing to forget that. For Houston, Tari Eason is questionable. Finney Smith, Van Vliet are out. Nobody unexpected or questionable for the Pels. So starting on the Houston side, generally anytime you have a pretty clean injury report like that on an 11-game slate, you're probably not going to have tons of interest in much. For Houston, that is the case. 10% ownership coming into Alperen Şengün at 9,600. He does have power forward eligibility on DraftKings. That is really nice, because the opportunity cost just goes way down when you can roster him at the second position. I'm getting about 8% of him. Fields at 10%. Looks fine. $3,700 Josh Okogie getting 2% ownership along with Smith and Shepard. Durant's at 5%. I have like 8% of Okogie right now. That probably just goes to somebody else once other value opens up. I have 7% of $6,300 Jabari Smith. I think he's a reasonable mid-range way to be different. He's at 0.87 DraftKings points per minute this season, 33-minute projection, going up against a Pels team that is third last in adjusted defensive rating. They rank 12th in pace. So it's a nice spot for the Rockets. Again, I don't want my night riding on Josh Smith or anything like that. But if you need a low-owned guy at around 6K, perfectly fine. Perfectly viable pivot to Jaime Jaquez, for example, who I'd said I think is fine, but I'm not getting 20% or whatever the field was at, 15%. I don't remember. In individual lineups, Jabari Smith, a perfectly fine pivot. He is not going to lose to Jaime Jaquez, less than 1 in 15 times or whatever it is. I have 1% Durant. He's 8,400. He's a perfectly fine pivot to like Kawhi or something if you wanted to go that route, but no priorities really for Houston. I do think that Şengün is the top play there. Overall this season, 1.37 DraftKings points per minute for Şengün, 28% usage rate, 30% assist percentage, 15% rebounding percentage. Really, really good. Does it all. Good matchup. Everything looks good for Şengün. On the Pelican side, there is literally no ownership here. I do not have a single player from the Pelicans. They are fully healthy. That means Zion is in. It means Jordan Poole is in. And you just have elevated price tags here from when Zion was out and Jordan Poole was out. I really just can't get to anything. Derek Queen is up to 7,400, and now you have Zion back. He's center only also, so the opportunity cost goes up. Trey Murphy is 7,900. Kyle said, do the Thunder win by 20, 30, or 40 tonight in the first half? Because they might win by like 80. It's just that game is just such a wild like combination of an unbelievably good team and a Ty Lue coach team. And I mean that in all of the negative ways possible. Yeah, I mean that game, obviously, like, it's the NBA. Maybe it's competitive, but like, that just feels like the game that it's like a 40-point game at halftime. Toronto taking on Milwaukee. In Milwaukee, 112 total for Toronto, 109 give or take for the Bucks. On the Toronto side, somewhere. There we go. Jakob Poeltl is questionable. He was downgraded during the day, so it does seem relatively likely he's not going to play, but I haven't seen news on it yet. We are getting some Knicks news right now. OG Anunoby is available. Cat is out. Josh Hart is out. Mitchell Robinson is out. I wish I had the Knicks roster memorized, but I don't yet. Let me circle back to the Knicks for a second. Yabusele at 3K, I think, becomes a thing. Is he in? Yeah, so he's not on the injury report. He should, I guess, become a thing now. You don't have Cat. You don't have Robinson. He's power forward eligible. So, yeah, I mean, that like Josh Okogie and Isaiah Jackson I had is gone now, I would assume. Huck Porty should play. He probably starts. Maybe they start both of them. I don't know. From a point per minute standpoint, I'm pulling that up now. You definitely got value on the Knicks. So you have Jalen Brunson playing with no teammates, or two teammates. You have Bridges and Anunoby. So I mean, yeah, like Brunson's not going to be 3% owned anymore. That contrarian play just became like a just very obvious $8,600 play. Bridges should play like infinite minutes, and Anunoby will play a lot, and then you're just getting value in the front court. If I take Karl Anthony Towns off the floor this year, I'm not going to bother taking off like Josh Hart because he's a secondary player. and isn't like dominating any one particular stat. But you can see like rebounding opportunities go up without Josh Hart, probably more than anything else. But without Karl Anthony Towns this year, so overall this year, 1.2 DraftKings points per minute for Brunson, 1.04 for Bridges, 1.01 for Anunoby. I don't know that I would necessarily expect Bridges or Anunoby to change that much. Maybe more rebounding, but like neither of them are generally getting their own shots or like turning into super high usage guys. But I would certainly expect Jalen Brunson, 1.28 DraftKings points per minute for Brunson without Cat. Bridges actually at 1.2 in 241 minutes, 21.5% usage rate. Anunoby at 1.07, 17.5% usage rate. So doesn't really look like it was hot shooting for Bridges either. So that's interesting. So at the very least, I would say it's like a marginal bump for Bridges and Anunoby. So far, it's been a pretty big bump for Bridges, and then it's a bump for Brunson as well. And then, obviously 30 or 3K Yabu is fine. Akporti is 3,100. The one benefit that Yabu does have over Akporti is that he is power forward eligible on DraftKings. Akporti is center, so you do run into the problem with him where you're trading off median projection for a spot in your lineup. Like he's going to be a good point per dollar play. But if he goes for 22, 23 DraftKings points, there's a pretty decent chance that like he's still hurting you just because on an 11 game slate, you're going to have not only random cheap plays that do well, but you're just going to have like mid-range guys that score 50 whatever fantasy points. And so if you throw a 24 fantasy point guy at center, you might be in trouble. But Yabu, you can use him at power forward. You can use him to like then get to Jokic at center or something like that. So obviously we need to see who starts and all of that. But do keep in mind the opportunity cost on Akporti is going to be higher than on Yabusele. 0.7 DraftKings points per minute for Yabusele this year. 0.79 for Akporti. Tyler Kolek, probably plays more. 0.86 DraftKings points per minute. Also, as far as, a Tyler Kolek narrative, not only does this just open up a bunch of minutes where, they could play small and maybe like Clarkson plays some more too. But like also you just open, you took out Hart, you took out Cat. So like you're opening up minutes, but also you had Kolek play a big role in that NBA Cup Finals game. Very easy to want to just like reward him anyway and find. There's, I guess my point is like there's a decent chance, even if the Knicks are fully healthy tonight, that you were going to see like some effort to like just get Tyler Kolek some more minutes. Now you don't really have to make an effort. They're just there for him. So like that's another value piece at 3,500 that's going to open up. You're going to be able to get a lot of value now from the Knicks. It's just a matter of, who it is. Pay attention to the ownership. Jordan Clarkson has been fucking awful this year. 0.75 DraftKings points per minute. But there should be minutes available. What he does with those, who knows? He's 4,500 shooting guard, small forward. So that's nice. But yeah, definitely going to be looking to a lot of the Knicks now. So anyway, to get back to where I was, which was Toronto and Milwaukee, Jakob Poeltl is questionable. Haven't gotten news on him yet. He was downgraded earlier today, so seems kind of likely that he's not going to play, but that hasn't been confirmed. If he doesn't play, then you get some more value here with Mamu Kalishvili, 4,300, power forward eligible, getting more minutes. Colin Murray-Boyles likely getting more minutes if Poeltl does not play. So opening some stuff up there, opening up some value. Those guys both have power forward eligibility as well, which is obviously nice. But for right now, have Poeltl projected in. And I guess one other thing to note, Jonathan Magbo is out. He is in the G League. So that is one of the bigs that Toronto has that they can't use to like fuck with their rotation if Poeltl is out. With Poeltl projected in, there's not much ownership coming into Toronto. It's essentially a healthy team at that point. 8% ownership coming into an $8,200 Ingram, 5% to Barnes, 3% apiece to Poeltl and Quickly. 9% Poeltl will be my highest owned guy if he's in. He is 5,300. Like that is a cheap price tag. But again, keep in mind that these player exposures and ownership are from prior to that Knicks news as well. So everything's going to change. Basically, I think that if Poeltl is in, Toronto is just like, what Toronto is. Scotty Barnes is good. He can have a good game. Brandon Ingram can have a good game. Poeltl Quickly, they can have good games. But none of them are going to stand out as like top plays because none of them are the best point per dollar plays, and none of them are the highest projected guys, but they do all have high ceilings at low ownership. If Pirtle is out, the biggest impact, I think, is just it opening up more value with Mamukelashvili and Colin Murray Boyles as your bigs that probably get more run. They are cheap. They are both power forward eligible as well. On the Milwaukee side, about a 109 team total here. 12% projected ownership coming in to Kyle Kuzma at $5,500. About 9% coming into KPJ at $8,200. 4%, give or take, to Turner, 3% to Rollins, 2% to Portis. I have about 11% KPJ at $8,200. Maybe some of that turns into Jalen Brunson now. He was projected for more ownership than Brunson at a similar price range. I assume that Brunson overtakes him now. So maybe like KPJ becomes the 3% owned contrarian pivot. He has certainly given us some very big games, but you also know that KPJ is a flawed NBA player. He can go out there and have very big games, but he will mix in his share of duds because he's not that good. But at 8,200, there is still upside for him. Kuzma has played has started to get more minutes as a result of Giannis being out. He's projected for about 28 minutes here. No Giannis. Cole Anthony is questionable. AJ Green and Kyle Kuzma are all questionable. If those guys were to miss, then obviously it's just opening up even more minutes for some conglomeration of guys that suck. But who those guys end up being, like Kuzma's probably the biggest piece here if he's out. But the problem with the Bucks is like it opens the door for Andre Jackson, like Gary Harris, guys that just suck from a point per minute standpoint, Amir Coffey maybe. So it's hard to get too excited about like guys getting more minutes potentially on the Bucks compared to like your good point per minute guys, like Mamu if Pirtle is out on the other side, for example, or like some of those Knicks guys. But assuming that the Q tags are in for the Bucks, I think mostly just secondary plays: Porter, Kuzma, Portis, Turner, Rollins. Like any of these guys are fine. You're playing them for their upside at low ownership. None of them look particularly good. I think Porter and Kuzma look the best. Washington taking on San Antonio. Washington finally got Alex Sarr back, so we're not getting the Marvin Bagley, Tristan Vukcevic like front court minutes anymore. Alex Sarr is relatively expensive at $8,100. He is center only. Hard time getting to him. There's not too much ownership coming into Washington. 8% coming into Keyshawn George, 7% to McCollum, 4% apiece to Justin Champagnie and Trey Johnson, though I suspect that probably comes down now that we have better value opening up. Sarr being back does add a high usage piece back to the Wizards. He has a 27% usage rate this year. That is the highest on the team. It'll cut into McCollum a little bit. It cuts into George a little bit. Sarr also has a 15% rebounding percentage and nearly an 18% assist percentage. So he is somebody that will cut into all of those rates and makes Washington just not look as appealing as they otherwise may have been. I still think Keyshawn George and CJ McCollum are fine if you're playing a lot of lineups, but they're not guys that I would be looking to build around. On the Spurs side, kind of wish that I'd gone to this. Oh, never mind. It's in San Antonio. I think they're in Washington like next month or something. Don't wish I'd gone to this game because that would have been a pain in the ass since it's in Texas. But on the San Antonio side, about as good a matchup as you can get. The Wizards rank 5th in pace and dead last in adjusted defensive rating this season. 27% ownership coming in to Dylan Harper at $4,700. That is my highest owned guy from the Spurs. It's one of my highest owned guys on the slate. We have him projected to play about 24 minutes. He has, in their most recent games, played 28, 25, 20, 26, and 23. He's averaging 24 and a half over his last 5. Second, I believe, overall pick in the draft this year in a dream matchup against Washington. He's cheap. Like the ownership does come down a bit and my exposure does come down a bit probably now with the Knicks news, but he's cheap. He's got a great matchup. He has point guard and shooting guard eligibility. So I do still like getting to him as a value, even though it will be probably a little bit less of a priority now with that news. Beyond that, secondary plays, Devin Vassell, Castle, Fox, all great matchups, all playable. I think it's really tough to get to a limited Wemby at center only. But beyond that, and I mean, if anybody can score 75 fantasy points in 25 minutes or something, it's probably Wemby against the Wizards. But it's not a small enough slate that I think I'll get there. But mix in, some Vassell, some Castle, some Fox. They have fantastic matchups. Overall this season, 1.08 DraftKings points per minute with a 27% usage rate for Dylan Harper. So the production's been there. The opportunities have been there. He has a 25% assist percentage as well. De'Aaron Fox is at 1.2. Stephon Castle is at like 1.2. So there's a lot of upside here for the Spurs. But the guy that stands out as I think the top priority is Dylan Harper. Detroit facing Dallas in Dallas. This game is going to kind of be annoying, mostly on the Dallas side. But starting on the Detroit side, we have nothing that matters on their injury report. They have about a 118 team total. The Mavs are about 110. So you have Detroit as a pretty big road favorite here against a banged up and bad Dallas team. On the Detroit side, 22% ownership coming in to Jaden Ivey at $3,400. That number almost definitely comes down because of, Tyler Kolek, for example, at basically the same price. I think that Ivey was getting ownership as a function of two things. One, his playing time has been increasing. He played 21 minutes his last game on the 15th. He played 19 the game before that. He's averaged 18.7 in his last 3, 17 over his last 5. We have him projected for 17 and a half minutes. I think you could argue that maybe, you bump that a minute or so. But also it was just that, people are going to want to play Jokic. People are going to want to play Doncic, etc. And we didn't have guys ruled out yet. Now we do. So ownership on Ivy comes down. He is still somebody that you can use as a contrarian value play, I think. But, not anybody that I'd be super excited about. He's still probably not topping like 20 minutes. But he is still really, really cheap. And the minutes have been increasing a little bit. Beyond that, 14% ownership projected to Tobias Harris at $5K. That number probably comes down a little bit as a result of value at Ford opening up, but he is cheap. He hasn't been great this year, but he hasn't been bad. 0.86 DraftKings points per minute, probably playing around 30 minutes. Everybody else projected for less than 10% ownership. Cade at 10.3, getting 9%. He's been great this year. 1.43 DraftKings points per minute. I have 9%. Maybe that ownership goes up. I don't really know what'll happen there. Like on the one hand, it's easier to pay up at guard now. On the other hand, you have Jalen Brunson just sitting there at almost $2,000 less. That is obviously going to get a lot of ownership. So maybe Cade just stays in this like 9% ownership range, but that is certainly fine. 7,500 for Jalen Duren looks like a pretty good price tag here against what could be a really shorthanded Dallas front court. Dallas's injury report, I didn't mention it yet, but Anthony Davis is questionable. Najee Marshall is questionable. Russell and Williams are both questionable. They don't matter for this. Derek Lively is out. So and Davis didn't go through shoot around. So there's a good chance that you're getting this Anthony Davis-less front court with like a limited Daniel Gafford. Jalen Duren could just absolutely destroy the glass in this game. He's only projected for 5% ownership. I have 16% right now. I like Jalen Duren at 7,500 quite a bit. That price tag is slowly dropping. Isaiah Stewart, Sar Thompson, Karis LeVert, all getting like 3 to 5% ownership. So I wouldn't say any like true priorities for the Pistons. I think Ivy and Harris kind of as value plays make some sense, but they look worse now than they did when I started the show. To me, outside of obviously like get to whatever Cade you can, I do think Jalen Duren's a very, very appealing, high upside, large field tournament play, like fully capable of just dropping 50 fantasy points at 7,500 in this spot. Josh said this slate is gross. Yes, sir, it is. Lakers taking on the Jazz in Utah. 126 total for the Lakers. Oh, sorry, I didn't talk about the Mavs. I don't want to talk about the Mavs, but I guess I have to. Have everybody projected in for right now. I think it's a reasonable approach going into the slate if you want to take out Anthony Davis and then, bump projections on guys like Cooper Flagg, PJ Washington, guys that'll see more usage with him out. Dwight Powell played 24 minutes without Davis last game. That's fucking disgusting. Daniel Gafford played 13. Sissy played 13. I think mostly if Davis is out, I'm going to be interested in getting to the guys that like, not the centers, just guys that'll shoot more. PJ Washington, Cooper Flagg, Ryan Nembhard to some extent. Dwight Powell, I just don't really want to give him a center spot. He's 3,300, but even if you get 24 minutes from Dwight Powell, it's probably not great. At best, I would say it's like a Huck Porty pivot, but probably just mostly getting to like more Cooper Flagg and PJ Washington. PJ Washington obviously can get to small ball 5 minutes as well. The Brandon Williams and D'Lo part, with Williams out last game, Ryan Nembhard played 38 minutes. So Nembhard, 4,800, not going to get any ownership, not going to project very well if Brandon Williams is in. But if Brandon Williams is out, Ryan Nembhard at 4,800 looks very, very good. So definitely pay attention to that. Also, if Anthony Davis is in, he's power forward eligible at 9,100. Like, yeah, give me some Anthony Davis at sub 10% ownership. But if he's out, that's where I think this team really gets interesting. And, 7K PJ Washington, $7,500 Cooper Flagg starts to look good. My signing said is D'Lo in. D'Lo is questionable along with Najee Marshall and Brandon Williams and Anthony Davis. D'Lo hasn't really been in the rotation lately. So, like, if you get Williams in, D'Lo doesn't really matter. If D'Lo is in and Williams is out, then $3,900 D'Lo is probably in the rotation, but like you're still getting good minutes from Nembhard. And then if they're both out, you're getting back to like, 35 plus minutes from Nembhard, I think. So a lot to pay attention to on Dallas. There is potentially an advantage to building with some semblance of this team out, just to make sure that you get like additional open spots to swap. Like I said, Anthony Davis was not at shoot around. I don't know if that matters. Like generally when somebody misses shoot around, I assume they're not going to play. When they make it through shoot around, I assume they are. Anthony Davis went through shoot around last game and then did not play. There also is the report that the Mavs are looking to trade Davis, Thompson, Gafford, Russell. So maybe they're going to, would make sense for them to be more cautious, I guess. But, we'll see. Najee Marshall was a midday downgrade, but it was with an illness. So, like, who knows there? Anthony Davis was not seen at shoot around. That's the only shoot around status update that I saw. So, I think it's reasonable to, at the very least, like go into this slate just assuming Davis doesn't play, which would mean mostly like bumping projections on Davis and Washington. If you wanted to just say, well, let's hope Brandon Williams doesn't play too, and then make sure you have a good amount of Nembhard, that's also fine. But definitely a lot of moving parts here with Dallas. Lakers at Utah. On the Lakers side, no DeAndre Ayton, no Austin Reeves, no Gabe Vincent, no Bronny James. Maxi Kleba is available. We have 26 minutes projected to Jackson Hayes right now without Ayton. He's been the backup behind Ayton. They combined for 48 minutes last game. I'm going to look and see if we have, I don't remember if Ayton's missed any time yet this year. Mentioned it the other day, but StatMuse, very, very good tool for this. You can just type in Jackson Hayes game logs without Ayton this season. November 2nd and November 25th, we got 32 minutes from Jackson Hayes on the 2nd. We got 30 minutes on the 25th. LeBron James was out for the game on the 2nd. He was in for the game on the 25th. So we have a 26-minute projection on Hayes. It could, he could play more, but he's 3,500, projects for like 23 fantasy points, 51% projected ownership. I had 63%. Again, some of that now should be turning into Huck Porty, should be turning into like Yabusele at power forward. So I do think his ownership comes down a little bit, but he's going to be a popular value play, and I think that he should. Again, you do run into the same opportunity cost issue at center, where there's going to be very high scoring centers tonight. But he has a really good matchup. Utah's the second worst defensive team in the league. They played a top 5 pace. He is just going to project well at that salary. Beyond that, 44% projected ownership coming into Luka at $12,000 in a great matchup. I have 29%, so I'm getting there. Not quite as much as the field, but I do have a lot, and that may go up now that more value has opened up as well. Nobody else before the show, at least, was projected for more than 10% ownership. Smart coming in at 8%, LeBron at 6%, LaRavia at 6%. I have 11% LeBron at 9K, a little bit above the field there. Probably just kind of turn some Luka into him, in a good matchup. But mostly, I think the priorities here are Jackson Hayes and Luka Doncic. On the Utah side, we do not have Lauri Markkanen. He was ruled out earlier in the day. We obviously do not have Walker Kessler. We don't have Niang, Toshibwe, a bunch of dudes that don't really matter. So you should get Kyle Filipowski chalk night, and deservedly so. He is only $5,700. He's a good point per minute guy. He is projected for about 41% ownership. I have 34%. He just looks good. I don't think there's a whole lot to say there. You have Markkanen out. You have Kessler out. You have more minutes available for Filipowski. So he looks good. Ace Bailey getting 18% ownership, 16% coming into Keontae George. I have 26% Bailey and 24% George right now. I like the ceiling that they offer. Obviously, there is some blowout risk here, but I do like the idea of, again, like if you're going to play Luka, pair him with some combination of Filipowski, Bailey, George, Sensabaugh, who's getting a lot of ownership before the show at 3,800, probably a little bit less now, but he'll still be really popular. Like, pair him with some Utah guys. Utah has a healthy team total. The matchup for them is fine. And if somebody on Utah does really well, it increases the chances that you get full playing time from Luka or from LeBron or whoever. Yusuf Nurkic getting 18% ownership at 6,100. I think he's a good play. I don't really have much of him. I've turned him into some other guys like Jalen Duren, for example, but certainly a high ceiling for Nurkic as well. This game should get a lot of ownership. I have 21% Isaiah Collier also at 3,700. I do think that comes down now that you have like Tyler Kolek available and other cheap pieces. But getting to a lot of Utah in general, and then like Luka and Hayes specifically. For Utah, I think the biggest priorities are Sensabaugh as a value play, Filipowski, and then it's like a step back to Nurkic, Bailey, George, Collier, Taylor Hendricks is 3,200. So a lot of this game. And that is nice too, because it means that you should have spots available to swap for like Dallas news, just because you're going to have so much of the Lakers game that starts after it anyway. Golden State taking on Phoenix in Phoenix. For the Warriors, nothing better than a Jason Kidd plus Steve Kerslake. For the Warriors, Seth Curry is questionable. No Al Horford. No Pat Spencer. For the Suns, Grayson Allen is questionable. Jordan Goodwin is available. Isaiah Livers is questionable. No Jalen Green. Starting on the Golden State side, Steph projected for 33 minutes, 40.5 fantasy points. Butler projected for 33 minutes, 37.5 fantasy points. No real ownership coming into this team. 5% to Steph at 9,400. Less than that to everybody else. I don't have a single Golden State player in a lineup right now. On the Phoenix side, but if you're going to go to Golden State, just go to the guys that can score 50 actual points, which leaves you basically Steph and Butler. On the Phoenix side, it's pretty similar. 5 to 6% projected ownership to Booker, to Williams, to Colin Gillespie. No priorities here. Nobody above 5% owned in my lineups. Mix in some Mark Williams as a pivot to Nurkic if you want. Same price tag, lower ownership. Devin Booker, 8,700. The dude's dropped 70 actual points in a game before. He can single-handedly win you a tournament. It's not super likely. There's a lot of higher priority plays. So nothing that really stands out from Golden State. Phoenix, I think the best way to sum it up is just like, if you're going to click somebody from this game, make sure it's somebody that if they scored 50 fantasy points, you wouldn't be absolutely shocked. Wrapping it up with Orlando and Denver in what should actually be a good basketball game. Orlando, 114 total in Denver. Denver, about a 120 total. The Magic have Tristan da Silva and Jonathan Isaac questionable. Jalen Suggs is out along with Franz Wagner and Mo Wagner. So the Magic are a bit shorthanded here and could be even more so if da Silva misses. On the Denver side, Tim Hardaway Jr. is questionable. Peyton Watson is questionable. Christian Brown and Aaron Gordon are both out. So both of these teams are a bit shorthanded. Starting with the Magic, there is a lot of ownership here. I have a good amount here. The priority here is Anthony Black, 5,900, point guard, shooting guard, playing big minutes, playing really, really well. He had already forced his way into more minutes prior to guys getting hurt. Now you take out Jalen Suggs, and it just makes it very, very easy for Black to play a lot. We have him projected just north of 33 minutes. He's averaged 33.7 over his last 3. He played 37 minutes last game. That was a game where Suggs played 29. You should get a lot of playing time from Anthony Black. He's a good point per minute guy. The price tag is still reasonable. So I have 33%, Fields at 37%. All of that looks good. Defensively so far this season, Orlando ranks second in defensive rating. Denver ranks in the middle of the pack. They are 18th. In pace, Orlando is actually 10th, which is higher than I actually would have thought. Denver is 23rd. So Orlando's been the better defense in terms of efficiency, but they also play at the faster pace. Denver's bench remains absolutely fucking awful. 22% projected ownership coming into $3,900 De Silva. One, I think that goes away to some extent because of the value that has already opened up. Two, it is a risky one because that's a 9 p.m. game where you do at least have the ability to swap him to Utah/Lakers guys. Those games start at the same time. There's not value that you want in the Golden State game, but you do have it in that Utah game at least. But, always going to be riskier when it is the last game of the slate. Banchero at 8,600 getting 20% ownership. Carter at 5,300 getting 13. I have 17% Carter, 9% Banchero, 9% Bane. The Magic, for the most part, just look like solid, like pretty good mid-range plays to get to. But the priority here is Anthony Black. Jet Howard is in 3% of my lineups at 3,100. Probably less appealing now that you have like the Knicks guys. But if you're playing, like the largest field tournaments, I could still see mixing him in here and there if you're playing like 150 lineups. On the Denver side, clearly, if you can get to Jokic, great. I do think he is more of a luxury than a necessity, even with the value that's opening up, although that does make it easier when you can plug in like Yabu at power forward. But I do think that Doncic is a bigger priority than Jokic, given the fact that he is $800 cheaper and he does have the better matchup. And he is, most importantly, at point guard instead of center. That being said, 12% ownership coming into Jokic. If you can afford him and he makes sense in your lineup, go for it. This is a team that just, I think, has secondary plays right now. Jamal Murray is in 12% of my lineups at 8% owned. I have 7% Johnson, 6% Watson. They have good players. The matchup isn't ideal, but they still have a 120 total. But they're not guys that are necessarily priorities because, Jokic you prefer, or I prefer Luka. Jamal Murray, I prefer Jalen Brunson for $100 more. Although Brunson will probably really kill Jamal Murray's ownership, which is nice. Einsteinium said, will Paolo Banchero be on a minutes limit today? He played 35 minutes last game, so they might call it a limit. I assume he's playing, low 30s. We have him projected for 34.5, 35, so he should be fine. So that wraps this one up. Thanks again for checking out the show. A lot of moving parts, a lot of news we're still waiting on. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel. You can use our projections for free. Link is in the description below. I'll be back here again tomorrow talking about tomorrow's slate. Thanks again. Good luck on your lineups tonight.